Have you ever been there, trying to build some big piece of software, maybe a new feature, and it just feels like you're juggling a million things in your head? It's a total mess, right? Well, today, we're going to talk about the tool that cleans up that chaos, UML class diagrams. And no, don't worry, this isn't going to be some dry, boring lecture. Think of these as the secret blueprint for your code. Seriously, let's get into it.
Okay, so here's the game plan. First, we're going to look at the big picture, what I'm calling the architect's blueprint. Then, we'll zoom way in and break down the most important piece of the puzzle. After that, we'll use a simple example, a student class, to make it all click. Then we'll look at how all these pieces talk to each other, and finally, we'll tie it all together and see why this stuff really matters.
All right, let's kick things off with the big idea. Think about building a massive skyscraper. You wouldn't just show up with a pile of bricks and start stacking, would you? Of course not. You'd need a detailed plan, a blueprint, so everyone knows exactly what they're doing. Well, guess what? Building software is exactly the same.
And that, right there, is the million-dollar question, isn't it? When your project has dozens, maybe even hundreds of different parts, all interacting, how on earth do you keep it from turning into a complete tangled mess? You know, that spaghetti code we all dread?
The answer is surprisingly simple, and it's the same one our architect would give us. You start with a blueprint. That's it. A clear, visual plan that shows you the whole structure before you even think about writing a single line of code. So in the software world, this blueprint has a name, the UML class diagram. So what is it, really? It's just a visual way to draw out your system's structure. It's like a map that shows you all the main pieces, we call them classes, what they know, what they can do, and crucially, how they're all connected.
Okay, so before we can read the whole map, we've got to understand the symbols, right? So let's zoom in on the most fundamental piece of this whole thing, the class. This is the core building block of pretty much any object-oriented system.
You know, the great thing is, every single class, no matter how complicated it seems, is made of just 3 simple parts. Super easy to remember. First, you've got the class name. Obvious enough, right? It's just what we call it. Second, the attributes. Think of this as the data the class holds, or the things it knows about itself. And third, you have the methods. These are the actions the class can perform, the things it can do.
All right, theory is great, but let's make this real. Let's take a look at a super simple example that we can all wrap our heads around. A student class in, say, a school's computer system. So look at this. It lays out that 3-part structure perfectly. The class name? Student. Easy. What does a student know? Well, in this case, a name and a role know. Those are its attributes. And what can a student do? It can study and take exam. Those are its methods. See? It's always that same pattern. What it's called, what it knows, and what it does.
Okay, so we've got our basic building blocks, our classes. But a system isn't just a random pile of blocks, right? The real magic happens in how they're connected. So now, let's look at how these classes form relationships to build a complete working system.
Now, there are a few different ways classes can connect, but we're going to focus on the 4 big ones. You've got association, which is basically a uses relationship. Think a driver uses a car. Then you have inheritance, which is a classic is-a relationship. And then there are 2 different kinds of has-a relationships, which can be a little tricky, aggregation and composition. We'll break those down.
Let's just quickly nail down inheritance, because it's probably the most straightforward one. It's just an is-a thing. So, a car is a vehicle. A poodle is a dog. The more specific class inherits all the stuff from the more general one. That's it. Simple. Okay, now for the has-a relationships. This is where people sometimes get a little tripped up, but the difference is actually pretty simple. It's all about whether the parts can live on their own. Let's start with aggregation. That's the weak link. A library has books. But if the library gets knocked down, the books themselves are still fine, right? They can exist independently. Now contrast that with composition, the strong link. A book has pages. If you burn the book, the pages are gone too. They can't exist without the book. So the one question you have to ask is, if I get rid of the whole, does the part survive? That tells you everything you need to know.
All right, so we've looked at the individual pieces and how they connect. Let's pull the camera back now and talk about the big picture. Why should you even bother with this? Why is taking the time to make one of these diagrams one of the best investments you can make on a project? Honestly, if there is only one thing you remember from all this, make it this phrase: clarity before code. That's the whole philosophy here. A UML diagram forces you to think things through to get that clarity before you dive headfirst into the code. It's about thinking first and typing second.
And the payoff for that is huge. For starters, communication. A diagram is like a universal language. You can put it in front of your whole team and suddenly everyone is on the same page. Second, you find problems way earlier. It's so much cheaper to fix a bad idea on a whiteboard than it is to rewrite hundreds of lines of code. And finally, it just makes complex systems understandable. Instead of being handed a tangled mess of code, you get a map. It turns something intimidating into something you can actually navigate.
So as you can see, a UML class diagram is so much more than just a bunch of boxes and lines. It's a tool for thinking, a way to plan and build better, smarter, and more robust systems. And that kind of leaves us with a question to chew on, doesn't it? What complex idea, in your job, in a personal project, anywhere, could you untangle right now just by drawing a simple blueprint for it?